Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper has criticized the Nanado-led government, calling its taxation system the worst in Ghana's history. He specifically condemned the implementation of new taxes like the emission levy as punitive and duplicative. In an interview with Citi News' Hansen Ajiman, Seth Terkper highlighted that the IMF program is intended to accommodate the new taxes.
The excise duty on vehicles, apart from the petrol that we pay, the excise duty on vehicles that are imported into the country, right, is graduated. The older the vehicle, the more you pay. And it used to be that even, if the vehicle was 10 years, it was confiscated, which has now been changed into, a tax, another exceptional punitive tax. But why is the tax being imposed? Because the vehicle is older. If I bring a new vehicle, apart from capacity, because you are consuming more fuel, if it is old, it means the engine is weak. And it means that more emission.
So you mean that at the time that particular levy was promulgated, the thinking was to have something towards emissions, which now has become a separate.
You can see the rationale. That is, it's damage to the environment from petroleum, right? So it's there.
Is it your case that the current government appears to have moved away from the rationalization of our tax regime to the extent that all the pillars for which our tax system were to protect, i.e. prevent duplication, to protect businesses and
by simplifying? Absolutely, because you can see that if you have a rational tax regime, you will have, 3 major taxes at imports. Sometimes customs withholds the 5% of the value in lieu of the taxes on income. That's the income tax that you should pay, which you can offset. That's a withholding tax, all right? But you can also see, that the taxes that we are talking about were designed to meet that objective of simplifying the tax regime, both for the consumer and for customs. So where previously you would have 4, but let me explain, maybe 6 or 7, I'll come to that, taxes listed on your, today it's about 14 or 16. The people have been displaying it. Yeah. And so what you are doing is that
is if, for instance, you go to a restaurant to go and buy something, you are giving your bill, the tax components that are being spelled out.
Yes, because your environmental tax, you have, e-levy, you have so many levies which today add up, to almost, 10 or 12, which defeats the rationalization that was done, in the past.
To what impact is this now, perhaps from the figures you're seeing and per your own analysis, maybe having on the economy, businesses and Ghanaians at large?
Obviously, the tax has become complex, difficult, to calculate and to do. But more importantly, when you begin to introduce punitive taxes, taxpayers find ways and means, of evading and avoiding the tax. So if you had a simplified tax regime, it's better, and compliance increases. And the evidence is that if you look at our tax to GDP ratio, well, until recently, as GR is claiming, the highest point at which, revenue was collected was 2015, as a percentage of GDP, no nominal terms.
You made a point that the emission levy, for instance, there's duplicity of it. But why would government be doing this? Is it an IMF conditionality or inherently?
No, the government has considered that it's an IMF conditionality, in addition to the other taxes, in there. And that is because if you read the IMF document, you see that most of the measures that the government promised, to use to do a turnaround of the economy are based on tax. And that is because, the flagship expenditure policies, we do not want to touch them. Right? So the fund, you wouldn't see any expenditure measure of substance. So the spending level.
So you're being forced to pay a lot now because government doesn't want to touch flagship programs like 1D, 1F, free SHS, and the rest?
I mean, basically, you can tell me, whether any of these are in the discussion today. As you add more taxes, and it's known from time immemorial that when you increase taxes, the burden, that's why you talk about it, burden of the tax becomes heavy, and people find ways and means of dodging it, or they just take themselves out of the system.
Have you experienced the worst of taxation, or should you expect more taxes going to the end of?
We are seeing the worst of the tax system since the ERP SAP, was launched to rationalize the tax regime. Because I explained it, many of the taxes that we are imposing today were part of, the VAT system.
This in your view is a worst form of taxation period.
It's punitive and a worst tax structure that we have had, and as with every taxes that's punitive, you end up not generating as much revenue as possible.
Should Ghanaians brace themselves for more?
No, I think that's. I don't think you want me to be political, right? It's time to rationalize. It's time to take stock.
Thank you very much.
Who best to do it than somebody who was part of the ERP SAP era? Don't forget that President Mahama was, the Deputy Communications Minister during the VAT era who led.
So you think that this is a basis for Ghanaians to bring John Mahama back?
Oh, absolutely.